This is the Observations Podcast for Sunday, the 22nd of December, 2024, and also our last podcast of the year as we go into holiday hiatus. But for tonight, hi, I'm Dale Franks.
I'm Michael Wade.
And I want to talk about, I don't want to talk about the politics around it, but I do want to talk about the budget deal that fractured into a million pieces, well, more precisely, 3 smaller pieces, during the week, largely as a result of Elon Musk just telling people on X what was in it and the amount of...
And what wasn't in it.
Yeah, and what wasn't in it. And the amount of pressure that Congress got on this was amazing, and it was drummed up in a really short time. One of the interesting things of the past several years, and it's something that you and I have talked about before, is that the government, the Congress, simply will not write and approve a budget for the coming year.
Yeah, we haven't had one since the 90s.
Yeah, and it's always this continuing resolution that gets tossed in at the...
It always gets done at the last minute.
Yeah, and it's always at Christmas, and they always use this manufactured
Christmas
crisis.
in September, and then there's always one around like March or April.
Yeah, and it's always a manufactured crisis. The Republicans are going to shut down the government if we don't give them... They're like terrorists who are going to shut down the government. Like, shutting down the government is a big threat. And I guess for Democrats it is, when the end all and be all of your entire policy is government. But especially around Christmas, it's very fake. And as I said, it's manufactured. This is not the way it's supposed to work. There aren't supposed to be continuing resolutions. You're supposed to pass a budget every year and pass it prior to October 1st. So
that's exactly right. September is when the fiscal year ends. October 1st is the beginning of the governmental fiscal year. And there's supposed to be a budget in place. That's what we put together back in 1994 with the contract with America, or for America, whatever it was.
With America.
And it's been done more in the breach than the observance.
Well, not until 2001. Then it used to be done properly right up until then. And by the way, the Constitution specifies that we need to have a budget.
The Congressional Budget Act of 74.
Yeah, well, there's that too. And we just don't do it. And there's a reason why we don't do it. And I think the reason has always been, well, wait a second. If we just come back every 4 months with a CR, we can just stuff it with every single pork barrel project that we want. And every 4 months, it is a 1,500, 2,000 page bill that doesn't hit the floor until, the day before they're supposed to vote on it, which also, by the way, is intentional, so that nobody gets it into their pretty little head to take a look at what's in it. And it just gets passed, often in the middle of the night, without anybody really understanding what's in it.
Well, it's interesting the way they figured it out this time, right?
Yeah, this time you have the ability just to drop, as soon as you get the text of it, you can just drop it into an AI large language model, and it'll just summarize everything that's in it. And it'll do it within
a few pages.
Yeah, within minutes, and give you a few page summary, and then everybody can see what's in the bill. The reason that this tactic has worked in the past has been the fact that you'd actually have to sit down and read through 1,500 pages of it, assuming you could get your hands on a copy. And it would take forever just to read it, to understand what was going on in there.
Yeah, the best you could do was like break it up into parts and have, 16 different
staffers,
aides, read through part of it and then give their report on their part.
Yeah, all of which takes an irreducible amount of time. And the whole point of releasing the bill basically the day before, the night before you're supposed to vote on it, so that you don't have a chance to really do that effectively.
Even though that's also illegal.
Yeah, well, those days are gone. Now you can just drop it into a large language model and it'll tell you
That's
what it
kind
says
of
in minutes.
interesting, isn't it? I've never AI is not something I relish or trust, but we're starting to see some useful parts of it.
Yeah,
This
well,
is one.
working in the technology sector as I do, I hate the term AI because AI doesn't exist. There's no such thing as AI. It's certainly not a, artificial intelligence that can make value judgments of any kind. What we do have are algorithms and large language models that can parse through a text very effectively, just as effectively as a person, and tell you what that text says and summarize that text very quickly, because all it needs to do is make the appropriate association between words via algorithm. Again, there's no judgment going on here. There's no decisions being made. All it's doing is taking a text and summarizing it.
It's just straight analysis, right?
Yeah, that is a great tool to have. And we didn't have it 4 years ago. I mean, heck, we barely had it last year, and certainly not the year before that, because especially the changes and the capabilities of these large language models to deal with huge amounts of text and to parse through them and to summarize them is something that's relatively new. And we
Mm-hmm.
just got, or Congress just got hit in the face with two things. Number one, the ability of an LLM to actually summarize your document accurately. And two, the ability of people who have a large reach on social media, and Elon's is about the largest, enables them to publicize what you're doing instantly to millions of people who will pick it up and retweet it, repost it, amplify it, pass it on. And you can start a groundswell with the public within minutes that just simply wasn't possible before. Congress is still stuck in the book age. And the way information was disseminated in the book age, certainly news, was you waited until 6 p.m. and then, Walter Cronkite or Dan Rather would come on and would have 22 and a half minutes to tell you what was going on in the world. And that 22 and a half minutes was basically the sum total of your knowledge about what the government was doing.
And you're hearkening back to a podcast we did months ago. I think back during the summer, about the book age and the information age.
Yeah, welcome to the information age, you assholes, because now you can't hide this stuff. And Elon put it out there for the whole world to see, and people didn't like what they saw. Who was it? Otto von Bismarck once said, the less people know about how laws and sausages are made, the better they'll sleep at night. Well, we're now seeing how the sausage is made, and people aren't liking it.
And they shouldn't. It's totally corrupt. It's all insider dealing. It is, and look, we, like, you and I have known this, and I'm sure our
Yeah,
listeners have known this for a long time.
When you talk about insider dealing, the 40% pay raise they gave themselves.
Right? But when it gets out to the masses, that's when trouble becomes afoot, because most people just look. They have more important things to do than pay attention to politics and what the hell is going on in Washington. They're trying to put food on the table. They're trying to earn enough money to make a car payment and pay rent. They've got plenty to do besides pay attention to what the assholes in Washington are doing.
Or to read a 1,500-page bill.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, even I'm not going to do that. And I'm a news junkie. I'm not reading 1,500 pages of dense language that I just, no, thank you.
The Deputy Secretary of Labor shall.
So, I mean, of course, people, but once it's broken down for them and it's put in their face, they're like, well, do you want to pay $150 million for research into why squirrels lick their nuts? No,
No, because we know the answer, because they can.
because they can't.
But the thing is, in the past, all the crap in the bill, I mean, they all knew it would eventually come out. But
Yeah,
it would come out in the days or weeks after the vote had been
after it was
taken,
passed. Right.
after it was passed, and get as upset as you want. It's
Yeah, the money's
done.
now already out the door.
So there's nothing you can do. You can just bitch and moan about what we did. And this has worked well for a long time. I just don't think, that long thing that I wrote about the shift that we're going through from the book age to the information age. I don't think people realize how important transparency and how easy imposing transparency is going to be in the modern information age. And it's not going to get any harder, quite the reverse. It's going to get way, way easier as time goes on. And
I hope so.
And all of these little games.
Hey, Dale, can you do me a favor and turn yourself up a little bit?
I don't know how to turn myself up without turning up all of the volume. So you may just have to turn up your own volume.
I mean, I'm at 100%.
Oh, I'm sorry. I mean, I can.
No, it's fine. I mean, I can hear you. You're just a little soft.
Okay, I can improve the gain on my mic. I can actually get really loud. But now I'm super, super loud.
Yeah, you don't have to be that loud.
So I can give myself.
Touch.
I can give myself.
That's perfect. Right where you are now.
A little extra gain. There we go. I don't know how that works out on the end where people are listening.
They'll deal with it.
But they may just have to turn themselves down. I mean, my output sounds good in the video, so we'll see how this works out. Maybe just a little punch is good for this. But as I was saying, I think it's just going to get easier, and all of these games that they've played are just going to be ineffective. Now, I'm certain that they'll probably come up with some new ways of trying to game the system.
They'll come up with some way to obfuscate, yeah.
But for right now, nobody knows how to game the system because it's so new.
Right. Yeah, and they're still playing the old games. They're not. They haven't adjusted. They haven't acclimated to how it is actually working right now.
Well, the trouble with Congress and government in general is that they work in an environment that is so far removed from the environment that normal people work in every day, because they are so constrained by these rules that they've built and these regulations and these procedures. It's really hard for government to modernize, and it's even harder, I think, for Congress to modernize, because all your modernization has to be agreed to by the Congress, or at least by a majority of the Congress. So they're kind of stuck back in this old way of doing things. I just don't think it's going to work very well for them anymore.
As long as we keep getting transparency, I don't really care what works for them. Matter of fact, I don't care if they work at all. I'd rather they not do anything.
Well, that's
to be quite honest.
That's the thing. It betrays a certain set of mind that a government shutdown is always a crisis.
Right.
Is it?
Yeah, well, all the air traffic controllers are going to go. No, they're not. They get paid either way. They have to work. They're essential employees. Well, like, the people who don't have to go to work are the people we don't give a shit about anyway.
Yeah,
and we think are superfluous.
It's 100,000, 200,000 administrators,
DEI, and I mean, it's just all these people who really have no functional ability whatsoever, who don't add anything to the ability of our government to be more efficient or I don't know, capable. They're just a drag on the system.
My mom always tells this story. She's told it to me a couple of times. That's always amusing. She said that, whenever she worked at Naval Hospital Camp Pendleton, she was a nurse. She worked at OBGYN clinic at Naval Hospital Camp Pendleton. And she'd say when there was a government shutdown, of course, all of the non-essential personnel didn't come into work. Of course, the nurses were there. The doctors were there.
Right.
They still did the stuff that they were supposed to do. And my mom, I was talking to her last week, and she said something, if we can work without you, if you're non-essential, why are you here in the first place?
Right?
Because non-essential means...
Why are you on the government dole?
Yeah, if you're a non-essential worker...
Why do we need you?
Yeah, what is it that you're doing that makes us care?
What is it you say you do here?
Yeah, exactly. And in the government, nobody asked that question. Because you're never going to eliminate that job once you have a job requisition.
And then these people are represented by unions. Even FDR was against government workers being unionized. It's absolutely ridiculous. You work at the largesse of the American taxpayers.
Well, the trouble is, initially, the way the civil service system worked is you got a job while, Benjamin Harrison was president. And then once he left office in 4 or 8 years, the new guy could just come in and clean everybody out and just rehire every bureaucrat in the government. Of course, in the 1870s, there weren't that many
that was the old
bureaucrats.
spoils system.
That was the spoil system. And we decided that doesn't work very well.
Yeah, we instituted the Civil Service Act.
Right. We need to reform the civil service so that we have these permanent civil servants who just do their jobs. Which, okay, there were problems with the spoil system. I think, there's a story of Abraham Lincoln just being enraged at the number of job seekers that were coming into his office in 1861 when he was worried about some other things that were going on and how much time they took, but how much of the president's time and energy simple staffing required to get people jobs. And
consider the fact that the government was what, like a 20th of the size that it is now.
By the way, my mom is in chat. Hi, chat. Haven't said hi to you. By the way, if you have any opinions, I am told that I need to tell you to be sure to put them in the comments or in the live chat if you're watching the live stream. But please, what's your opinion on the government shutdown? Please put it in the comments.
Also, like and subscribe.
Oh, yeah, wait a second.
That
Hold
helps
on.
us out.
Hold on. I've got a thing for that. I just have to turn it on. There we go. Oh, I went the wrong way. So there's
that works. That works.
The like, comment, and subscribe thing. I'm supposed to play that as well because, that's how YouTube works apparently. But my mom is actually in the chat here, said not only were they non-essential, they got paid the 2 weeks they were off.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing. It's like, all these poor people are not going to be, getting paid over Christmas.
Won't be able to buy Christmas
but they're
presents
going to get
for
the
their
money
toys.
back.
Yeah,
they still get paid.
Yeah, but they won't be able to buy Christmas presents for their children if
they should have already bought them. What the fuck?
Yeah, I mean, it's the 22nd. Come on, if you're only buying Christmas presents for your kids now, you're an awful parent.
All the good toys are gone.
Yeah, you've waited way too late. You needed to have this done back in November.
There are no more Cabbage Patch dolls.
Yeah, they're gone.
No more Beanie Babies.
What I found also interesting was the way the Democrats responded to Elon Musk going out and publicizing this, upsetting their apple cart. And it's amazing. You can see it run almost like talking points were sent out.
Yeah, it's such obvious trolling talking points too. They're trying to get Trump's goat by making it seem like Elon is in charge and Trump is just along for the ride. They're trying to hammer his ego.
Yeah, which by the way
It's
is
just not going to work.
which by the way is why the title of this podcast, when after we do the live stream and I get it
Yeah.
saved, is going to be President Musk. And I have the picture of President Musk that I'm going to show as the thumbnail for this video, because they've been saying, well, I didn't know that we had President Musk. I thought Donald Trump was president. But apparently he's just doing whatever Elon Musk wants. And it really is a transparent attempt to attack Trump's ego and to try to drive a wedge between him and Elon Musk.
Yeah. I mean, Trump is very thin-skinned for sure. But I don't think he's that thin-skinned. I mean, he can sniff out a trap.
I certainly hope so. And I certainly hope the justification is that, this is Elon Musk doing this at Trump's bidding. This is what Trump hired him to do. And the fact that
he's not even getting paid for it.
Yeah, and he's not getting paid for it. And the fact that he is apparently fairly effective at doing the job that Trump gave him. I mean, you can try to drive all the wedges that you want, but at the end of the day, Trump just has to come out and say,
who's president right now?
Yeah, well, let's not even get into that morass.
I mean, seriously,
Who's
they're
been
acting like Trump is already president, because guess what? He's getting shit done, and he doesn't even have any power yet.
Yeah, he hasn't even taken the oath. We still have technically Joe Biden as president, although
for another month.
Based on other news that came out this week, he hasn't really been the president since about 2022.
Yeah, right. Really, since forever.
Yeah, there was a story that came out this week that said he was too tired.
Wall Street Journal, yeah.
He was too tired to talk to the Joint Chiefs of Staff during the Afghanistan withdrawal.
He kept a bunch of warriors on the tarmac while he took a nap on his plane.
Yeah.
Who the fuck does he think he is?
Yeah, well, he thinks he's the president. But the weird thing is that now that Donald Trump has been reelected, Joe Biden, and for months has been, ever since that failure of the debate, Joe Biden is this weird interregnum figure who's there as a figurehead.
He's abdicated. He's absolutely abdicated.
And everyone is
he's
looking
Edward the Seventh or Edward the Eighth.
Yeah, well, he's only abdicated except for the pardon
power.
The
actual abdication, yes.
Yeah, and exercising the pardon power, which he's been very keen.
Oh yeah, he's been real quick on that.
But other than that, we haven't heard much from him. And Donald Trump, one thing you have to say about Donald Trump, and it's always been true, is that the second he steps on the stage, he sucks all the oxygen out of the room.
It's true.
And him winning this election has basically, I mean, you've heard of lame duck presidencies before. This is the lamest of duck presidencies. You have a president that's not fully compos mentis, as they say, and you have the incoming president who just basically draws everything to him. And the media, especially the mainstream media, as much as they hate him, cannot help themselves. They have to cover him obsessively. And
well, you saw when he went to France, Macron was all over him. Zelensky was all over him. I mean, they just glommed to him because they know that he means what he says and he's going to do something. He is not an idle person. He does not make idle threats.
No, and you may not like what he says, and he's already said a couple of things. We haven't really talked about it much, but the whole tariff thing, which, Trump is often very good on policy. But when he goes bad on policy, he goes really, really bad. And so this tariff thing is frightening. But
except it's being effective. I mean, you and I both know with our economic understanding that tariffs are not a good idea. However, when we're facing tariffs, and I think we talked about it last week or the week before, or maybe we talked about it just on the phone. Like Canada has like huge tariffs against us. So does Europe. And so does China. Using it as a bargaining chip has been effective. It was effective in his first term. It seems to be swaying some opinion now. I mean, I'm in agreement with you that imposing tariffs is really just a tax on us. It's like we said a couple weeks ago. I mean, we put a 25 cent per tariff on whatever. Well, that's just a signal to our own producers to go up to 24%, right?
Well,
Or
see,
23%.
but see, here's the thing: the way he explains it, and I don't really want to get off on tariffs because that really wasn't what I wanted to talk about. But the way he explains it is, I'm going to have the Chinese pay these tariffs. Chinese don't pay the tariffs. They're not buying their own stuff. We're buying their stuff. We're the ones who are paying the tariffs, not the Chinese. The Chinese aren't paying a dime.
Well, they do have to repatriate those dollars, though.
Yeah, but they don't do that. They just buy U.S. treasuries by 20, I think, was it by 2035 or 2040? Just the interest rate that they're getting on treasuries, just their coupon payments will cover the cost of their entire national defense establishment.
Yeah, what are we paying now? Like over $1 trillion a year in coupon payments.
Yeah, and the Chinese are probably getting 250, 300 bill a year on coupon payments at this point. They're probably running a full quarter to a third of all of our treasuries. I don't know exactly. I'm not sure anybody does in terms of, how many people own treasuries in the secondary market, but they own a lot of them, and it's allowed them to, A, keep the renminbi low because they don't repatriate that currency, but they got to do something with that money. They can't put it in their Scrooge McDuck money vaults, so they buy U.S. treasuries with it. And China's a complicated situation. Tariffs are complicated, and to the extent that Trump wants to use tariffs as a stick to beat other countries over the head with, I'm fine with it, but you also have to be prepared. What happens if the country says, "Go ahead, put your tariffs on"?
Right.
We don't care.
Yeah, and that's the danger, right? I mean, it's playing chicken. But so far, he's been pretty good about playing chicken. And what he's doing is he's inviting them. Look, you don't pay that.
The trouble is,
you don't have to pay the tariff if you build your factory here and make your shit here.
But the trouble is that they realize, a lot of times some presidents, I think Joe Biden is probably a good example of that. Some presidents say things and everybody listens to them and goes, sure you will. Yeah. Donald Trump says things and people go, oh, this crazy son of a bitch will do it.
It's true. Because they can't, he's so unpredictable. And that's a good thing. That's actually a very good thing when it comes to foreign policy. You don't want to be predictable. You want them to be second guessing themselves.
Well, he is predictable in the sense that if he says he's going to do something, he's going to do it.
Yeah.
He doesn't bluff a lot. A lot of presidents have been, Joe Biden, again, full of bluff and braggadocio to a very large degree. So was Obama. His red lines in Syria and all of that stuff. Sure, you can say that as much as you want, but if you don't ever do anything about it, then people don't listen. Trump does things about it. And
he took out Soleimani.
And he
took out that brigade in Syria. I mean,
oh yeah,
he doesn't mess around.
That is a great story right there. Trump basically called the Russians and said, "Hey, do you have any Russian army guys in Syria?" And they're like, "Oh no, we have no army." Baghdad Bob, we have no army people within 100 miles of here. And he said, "Are you sure? Are you really, really sure that you don't have any of your troops in Syria?" "Nope, none at all." "Okay, bye." And then he just, who knows how many Wagner PMC guys he killed over the next week.
Quite a few.
So I think to sort of drag us back to what we were talking about, Trump, I don't think you can drive a wedge between Trump and Musk on this by attacking Trump's ego, because Trump just comes back and says he's doing exactly what I asked him and Vivek to do. This is what it looks like. You can call him President Trump all you want, but the simple fact is he works for me. And he's doing it for free. And by the way, he's effective at it. So you
He's
can call,
incredibly effective.
yeah, you can call
He
him
and
President
Vivek.
Musk all you want, but at the end of the day, he works for me and he's doing exactly
Go
what I
ahead.
want him to. Go ahead.
Fine.
I'm the one sitting in the Oval Office behind the Resolute desk, not him.
And they have been incredibly effective. And again, let's remember, they're not in power yet. And they're already getting results. That's just amazing.
Yeah,
That's how much of a power vacuum is going on in Washington.
DOGE doesn't exist.
Right.
It's not a thing. It has no legal existence at all. It won't until...
Even when it does exist, it will still not have any legal power.
No,
it's an advisory body only.
Yeah, it is an extra governmental advisory body that is chaired by non-paid advisors.
Right.
And its sole job will just be to issue recommendations. But so far, their issuance of recommendations has been pretty darn effective.
Absolutely. I mean, you're seeing people saying, oh, you said jump? Well, how high? I mean, that's how they're acting. And, good. That's what we want. We need some more order in this chaos that has been around for the last 4 years.
This was an easy win, though, because Congress is so bad at this. At the end of the day, for DOGE to work, they're going to have to look at the discretionary budget, and they're going to have to figure out how many thousands of people need to be fired, how many offices need to be closed, how much funding is going to weird stuff that should just stop, and all of the people who are paid to do that weird stuff will no longer be paid and will be out of government. So that's going to cause a lot of agita, because now you're actually talking about putting people out of jobs. So far, that's not what we've been talking about. Second is entitlements are 2/3 of all federal spending.
That's the biggest problem, right?
And once you touch Social Security and Medicare, every elderly person in this country,
big issue.
That's when you start seeing like the old Paul Ryan commercial where Paul Ryan is shoving Granny off a cliff. That's what you have to deal with, because once this government spending starts, cutting it becomes extraordinarily difficult. It creates its own constituencies in the government and out. The NGOs. I mean, we haven't even talked much on this podcast about the extraordinary amount of money that the federal government sends to non-governmental organizations.
Oh, yeah. IMF, NGOs, all these grants that we give to medical organizations, like the ones that were funding the Wuhan research. Yeah, no, we give out hundreds of billions of dollars every year to these people.
I mean,
and it's all grift.
Yeah, and these NGOs, several of them, and there's a couple of them that are little more than CIA fronts. I was watching Mike Benz on Joe Rogan, and he just lays out chapter and verse at some of these international aid NGOs who exist almost entirely via funding from either the DOD or the CIA. They're not non-governmental organizations. You're not a non-governmental organization when more than 90% of your entire budget is provided by governments.
Right.
You are at best an intergovernmental organization.
Right. I mean, just because there are no governmental people sitting on your board and controlling your decisions, if you're getting most of your budget from the American taxpayers, you're a governmental organization.
And your decisions, by the way, will be made in such a way as to keep that constituency happy.
Absolutely.
And so, there's all of these, like, the U.S. government funds one what is that one group? I forget the name off the top of my head, but they're the big group that is doing all of the disinformation on social media stuff.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah, yeah. Uh, oh, what is it? Oh shit.
yeah, I
I
can't.
know exactly what you're talking about, and they just got refunded too.
Yeah, I can't think of the name, but they're an NGO, and they're funded almost entirely by the U.S. government.
Oh God, it's right on the tip of my tongue, and yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
And and trying to
It's
cut.
like C something C
Yeah, I just don't. I can't
C
think of the name to
G
save my life.
A.
But all of that stuff has to stop. That has to be cut. I mean, Musk is talking about looking at how much we're making in taxes, which is, roughly as of 2023, 4.4 billion a year. And he's thinking we
Trillion.
can, or yeah, 4.4 trillion a year. Government spent 6.7 trillion in 23, and he's thinking we can get government expenditures down to that 4.4. I don't know how you do that when a trillion of that is just debt service at this point, which is, by the way, unsustainable. But I mean,
Yes.
you're going to have to cut everything by half, at least, to get down to that $4.4
Well, you
billion
get rid of the
spending
NEA,
target.
you get rid of whatever the arts thing is. You get rid of um, a lot of this NGO spending. It's going to get you part of the way there.
Yeah, but the trouble
There's
is,
still about 2 trillion you're going to have to cut.
yeah, and the trouble is the entire discretionary budget is 1.5
Yeah.
trillion.
And a lot of that discretionary budget goes to social welfare and military.
Yeah,
Well, and disaster relief.
the point is that even if you cut, I mean, you just eliminated the Department of the Treasury, Interior, Defense, State, Homeland Security. You got rid of all of it. All right, that saves you $1.5 trillion.
Right.
And now the only thing you have left are Medicare, Medicaid, entitlements, and interest on the national debt.
Well, and that's the problem. It's the entitlements. Like you said, it takes up 2/3 of the budget. And while our generation, I include you in our generation, um, has been pretty clear that, like, fine, we know we're not getting anything, that it can't last. We just don't want you taxing our kids. So fuck it. We'll give it up. Just proceed as if we didn't exist.
We'll work
This is
as
Gen X.
we'll work as Walmart greeters until we're 90.
Right. Fuck it. We have ways to compensate. Go ahead and get rid of it. But even that is not going to save enough, because the boomers, while they're old, they're not that old. Right? I mean,
Well, they're all in, the boomer generation is now all in their
60s to 80s.
60s to 80s, yeah. So, they're all retiring in the next 5 years. 5 years from now, the last of the boomers are going to be of retirement age. And they're going to be out of the system, or they're going to be in the system. When I say out of the system, they're going to be out of the paying for Social Security system, and they're going to be in the receiving end of the system. There are not enough of us to fund all of them. There's, I think, even if you take a minimal look at it, there's 55 trillion in unfunded Social Security liabilities. We have no idea how we're going to pay those. We've made lifetime promises to the baby boomers, basically everybody since 1936. The baby boomers may be the last generation to see a dime out of Social Security.
I expect.
As
I
Glenn
mean, I
Reynolds,
expect to see nothing.
either that or
I mean, I'm 56, so I've got another 9 years before I can even. Well, that's not true. I guess at 62 I could start taking money.
not
But
really. I think you are your full benefits retirement age is 67 and a half.
well, that may be true. I don't even know.
So
I
it's
know I
not.
have to sign up for Medicare at 65.
Yeah, well, Medicare works a little different than Social Security. They keep
Right. Yeah.
increasing the retirement age. So your retirement age and mine, by the way, are both um, 67 and a
Extended.
half. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and look, so I expect to get nothing out of all this. And that's fine. You know what? Fine. I'll deal with it. I never depended on that. I never expected it. I always knew it was a pipe dream. I could see the writing on the wall 30 years ago. What I don't want is for my kids to have to pay into this Ponzi scheme and have their lives wrecked for something they're never, ever, ever going to get.
Well, look, if your kids really want to fix it, all they have to do is get married immediately and begin having 3 children plus per family. I mean, they could fix. They could turn
Well,
this
I would
train
like that.
around.
I would love that if my kids did that. But that's not exactly something I can guarantee.
No, but I mean, look, if younger people are afraid of Social Security, you can turn this train around. All you got to
Yeah,
do,
you could start having more kids
start
and
having kids.
repopulate the United States, right?
Yeah, exactly. Bring the fertility rate back up to 2.4, and
And how's that worked out for um, South Korea or China
well, the
or
trouble with
India?
well, the trouble with South Korea is they don't have kids. The trouble with China is they don't have kids, and they've been legally banned from having kids, more than one,
And Japan?
for 30 years, and they don't have kids either. You can turn this around, but this demographic collapse that the West is
They've been trying to
experiencing.
pay people in like Denmark to have kids. Like they're literally trying to pay them to have kids.
Yeah, look,
And I think France did something similar.
yeah, look, it's not a bad strategy.
No,
Have
not
kids.
at all.
If you want to keep these systems going, like Social Security, almost every welfare system in the world or every retirement system in the world, government retirement system, requires current workers to pay for current retirees.
Right.
The whole idea is based on the population pyramid, that I'm always going to have these many incoming people in each generation. Our population is going to continue to increase, or at worst, stay steady, and we're going to be able to pay out these benefits. However, whenever, women are now living to, 83 is the life expectancy, or even more. Social Security, life expectancy was 65 when Social Security was implemented in 1936. So we expected you to have, 6 months.
2 3 years, right?
Yeah, maybe 2 or 3 years, and then you would gradually, be shuffled off this mortal coil, and everything would be fine. Well, we're 20 years beyond that in terms of life expectancy, and we're not having kids, so this system is not sustainable. I don't know what DOGE does to fix that. DOGE is not going to fix the
DOGE can't
demographic
fix that.
collapse.
Yeah,
And
no, DOGE can't fix that.
And the only thing you can do to keep Social Security alive at some point would be to means test it. And that undercuts the entire justification for Social Security completely, because the whole point of Social
But
Security
it's
was,
still not a bad idea.
yeah, but the whole point of Social Security was everybody gets a little something, something. It may only be
Right.
$1,600 a month, but it's your something because you paid into it all your lives. Now, if you're going to
But
change that,
realistically, though, it's probably the best option. I'd rather poor people who don't have a lot get the money they need in retirement than me. I don't need it. It's not going to make a big difference in my life.
okay, but now let's think about what we've done here. Now we've said, here's what's going to happen when you apply for Social Security. We're going to root through your entire financial life to determine whether you are rich enough to not need it. You're going to have to tell us what all your assets are. We're going to have to know exactly how much money you have in the bank. We're going to have to know all the real estate you own. And by the way, if your house that you bought, look, I bought a house in 2001. I paid $240,000 for it. My mortgage is almost paid off. All in the place free and clear. Zillow says the place is worth $800,000. So technically,
800.
yeah. So technically, I have a net worth.
Fucking California.
Yeah, technically, I have a net worth approaching $1 million. What do I do if the government says, well, you got an $800,000 asset here that's just sitting here? You need to sell that, move into a smaller house, and that 800 grand will fund your retirement, and you can live in a little 1-bedroom apartment with all of your stuff sold off, and you can live comfortably without the government having to pay you any Social Security. I just don't think that sort of system is going to fly for people who have been having 7.5% of their income taken for their entire life, only to be told, ooh, you're just a little, you had the American dream. You got a house, you paid off your mortgage, you got all set up, you got ready for retirement. Now you're going to have to sell all of that stuff off and buy an annuity that's going to pay you until you die because you're too rich for Social Security. I just don't.
And yet, this is exactly what I expect to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's the only way that it can.
And it's going to suck. It's going to be awful. But I have kids, and I want them to be in a better position. You know, Gen X has always been screwed. We've always been screwed. And I mean, that's just the way it works. It sucks, but I'm willing to make that sacrifice if it means that my kids will be better off. And that's, and that's just me. I'm not saying that that's going to be everybody. You're absolutely right that that's going to cause a serious rift in the social contract. I'm just saying that I expect it to happen. So
yeah, but it's that rift in the social contract. And by the way, I think I have fixed things up here so that my volume is normal.
You're much, much more clearer now.
On my end, I'm still pegging the meter on this thing, but I think I've increased my volume in Zoom and not increased it in OBS. So sorry for the technical chatter, although I'm still just pegging the meter here.
But that's just on your local.
Yeah, well, that's what's coming through OBS, so that's getting awfully loud. But in any event, we'll continue on. So the whole DOGE thing, I just don't know ultimately if they can be successful. Right now, it looks great because they've hit Congress where Congress is weakest, trying to do some sneaky shit in the middle of the night. That's always going to be a low-hanging fruit.
Well, but let's also, think about what are the actual expectations? Because remember, they have no power, right? They're an advisory board only. So the expectations should be pretty low, I would think. Simply bring some transparency, which is what Elon and Vivek have promised to do, I think is going to be effective. People should know what their money is being wasted on. Well, I know Rand Paul has been doing this he does this every year. Yeah, and actually right about this time, he does his best.
And how effective has he been at doing it?
Exactly.
And at the end of the day, because they don't have any power, what do you do if DOGE says, okay, you've got to cut, let's just $500 billion. We've identified $500 billion that we can cut from the executive departments. This is what you got to cut. And Congress will look at it and say, thank you for your hard work, Elon, Vivek. We appreciate your dedication to doing this for free. Now go fuck yourself, because we're not going to cut this stuff.
So what about the idea of rescinding the Anti-Impoundment Act? That's been floated recently. So the Anti-Impoundment Act was, I guess that was Nixon era, right?
Yeah.
And it basically says that if money is appropriated by Congress, you can't withhold it. You have to spend it.
Right.
Right.
Essentially, what the president tried to do, what Nixon tried to do, was just perform sort of line-by-line rescissions on spending bills and just saying, okay, well, you've appropriated the money. I'm just not going to spend it and return it to the Treasury. And Congress
Right.
came back and said, no, if we appropriate the money, you have to spend
You
it
have to spend it.
because
Right.
Congress says that we're the ones who appropriate money. Your job is to obey, is to faithfully execute the laws. And this
Right.
is the law, and you have to spend the money. And the Supreme Court agreed that that's how it worked.
Yes.
And the Supreme
Well,
Court's,
that was the Berg court, though.
yeah, but the Supreme Court's position was, okay, fine. If you want a line item veto, then you're going to have
Which
to
Clinton
amend.
tried.
Yeah, you're going to have to amend the Constitution. You can either return the entire budget to Congress or you can accept it, but you can't go through line by line and change it. And that has hampered every president since Nixon in any attempt to change how the government spends money. And oddly enough, it was Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich who were the only two people since then who were ever able to get together and to agree on being able to balance
To a line item veto. Yeah.
balance the budget.
Well, and that got shot down by the court as well. But, uh, yeah. So, I mean, I think a reform or a rescission of that Anti-Impoundment Act, there are some legitimate concerns about rescinding that. But in a time like this, where we are spending so much more money than we have, I think.
By the way, it's a trillion. It's a trillion at this point. We're looking at deficits of like $1 trillion every 100 days.
Right. Yeah. So that's it's almost $3.5 trillion per year. We can't afford that.
Yeah, that's not sustainable. And
No.
I can't believe that the whole house of cards hasn't come tumbling down already.
I mean, the only reason is that we are the strongest economy in the world.
Yeah, what are your options if there's no US?
Right. So we get a large amount of largesse from outside investors because it's the safest place to put your money. And yes, that's true, but for how long?
Yeah, it's the safest place to put your money until we decide to make it useless. If
Right.
the US dollar is useless, then how are you going to get your money back?
Well, you can't. I mean, that's just it. It's what can't go on forever will not.
Yeah, if it costs $150,000 to buy a loaf of bread in the United States,
Right.
then your $150,000 in treasury bonds or what have you are
They're worth a load.
they're worth a loaf of bread. That is money that you've lost. Now, if you're a stock investor, then presumably the price of your stock has now gone up to, $870 billion per share. So I guess in that sense you're fine because you own an asset, but
Right, but
the
have to
treasury
translate
market
it
will
into
collapse.
actual money, and that money, if it's worthless, is worthless. Now, how much you have of it? I mean, this is the Weimar Republic, right? I mean,
Yeah,
you
but
had to get paid 3 times a day just to make sure that
yes, but
you could
internationally,
stay up with inflation.
internationally though, there will be a forex market. I mean, the dollar will have
but so
some
what?
value. I mean, it may
Well,
be
I mean,
30 trillion to the
like, there's-
euro, but
but
it'll have a value.
you're spending, but you're discounting when you're spending in the forex, right? So you're not selling at full value. You're selling at a discount, and you're gonna have to discount quite a bit if the dollar is dropping dramatically.
Yeah, and so we've been peering into the edge of that abyss for 20 years now, and we've gotten away with it. And the trouble with getting away with things for so long is that you end up with things like modern monetary theory that says, well, you can get away with this forever.
It's literally the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. That, what's his name? Piketty. Oh yeah, because it's fiat currency. You can just print as much of it as you want. You realize that like inflation is still a thing, right? Like it happens. No, no, no. That's not a big deal. You just print as much as you want. Dude, no, that's not how it works.
Well, at least Bitcoin exists.
It's worked out for El Salvador.
Yeah, well, maybe one of the only trustworthy currencies there is. And even Bitcoin is kind of a fiat currency. It's just that nobody accepts it, so it's not very useful now. The dollar collapses. If we borrow ourselves into bankruptcy, then I guess El Salvador will be in really great shape because they didn't dollarize their economy.
That's right. Neither did Argentina.
So,
And Malay has actually turned a profit. No, well, turned a profit. They had a positive GDP for the first time in like 20 years.
yeah, well, there's a I saw a story this week. There's been a kind of a political crisis that has been bubbling and ongoing in Spain for the last 9 months, which means that they haven't been able to actually form a government in Spain. And as a result,
they're parliamentary, right?
Yeah, but they haven't been able to form a government. So without a government or a prime minister or anything else, everything is kind of at a standstill. So Spanish unemployment has dropped to its lowest point in 20 years.
Of course.
One of the things that I don't think people realize is how much money the federal government extracts from the productive economy and the price that we pay for not having that money being spent productively in the private sector.
Yeah. Well, I've been talking about this for years, and we've definitely talked about it before, that how much of our GDP is actually taken up by federal government and local and state government hiring. We talk about employment numbers. Well, how many of those are government jobs, which are net zero, actually negative GDP type jobs?
No wealth is produced. No
right.
goods exist because of those
Nope.
government jobs.
And it's over 25% at this point, and it's getting higher. It's not bad to have government jobs, but when it takes up that much of your GDP, that means that you're not getting ahead. You're falling behind as a nation.
Yeah, so I'm coming from chat. We are not overspending. They are spending, wasting, and stuffing their pockets. Just stop that first.
But how is that not overspending? I mean, that is overspending.
Yeah. When we say we are overspending, the nation is overspending. That spending is run through Congress. And
right.
By the way, we keep electing the same people to Congress over and over and over. There was that DeLauro woman I saw who, dresses like a pop singer from the 1990s, even though she's like 80 years old.
Hair woman?
Has the purple hair. And she has
giant nose.
And she has been in Congress since 1991.
She's the most powerful Democrat on the budget committee or something.
Yep. And she's been there since 1991.
And she's nuts. She's absolutely crazy.
Yes, she is a full goose loony, and she is the big Democrat when it comes to budgetary items. And she's been there for 33 years.
Yeah, she's the ranking Democrat. She's actually the most powerful Democrat outside of Chuck Schumer.
And by the way, the same people keep sending Maxine Waters and
Sheila Jackson Lee,
Chuck Schumer, they all get sent back time after time after time. And when you ask people about Congress and you say, hey, what do you think about Congress? Well, they're a bunch of crooks. Huh. Okay.
Except my guy.
What about your congressman? Well, my congressman is this paragon of American values who I will always vote for.
Oh, people are such idiots.
And, the trouble with living in a democratic society is that the people who are in power are people that you're putting there. Assuming, of course,
this is why California is California. This is why New York is New York.
Assuming, of course, that the electoral system actually works the way it's supposed to.
Well, okay, yeah, that's a whole another conversation.
That's a whole nother conversation. But technically, in a democracy, you get the government you deserve because it's the government like H.L. Mencken said, democracy is the idea that the voters deserve to get what they want, good and hard. And that's what we've gotten. And look, the voters in this country will never say no if a politician comes up and says, hey, I have free shit. Would you like free shit? I can give it to you. Oh. And especially if you're running against someone who says there is no such thing as free shit and I'm not going to give you any of it.
Yeah, it tends to fall.
Yeah, I don't want to listen to you. I want to listen to this other guy who says that he can tax other people to give me stuff.
Right.
That's the guy I want to vote for. And so we get into somebody in chat said when the economy is booming and inflation is low, voters will ignore this stuff. But when there are obvious issues, the people are more than willing to get angry at politicians. And the problem with that is that when everything seems okay, people don't demand any sort of fiscal responsibility. And by the time the average person figures out that something is wrong and something needs to be done, well, it's probably way too late.
Yeah, that's a good comment, actually. It's kind of human nature, though, isn't it? I mean, let sleeping dogs lie.
Well,
and
look, in one sense it is, but in another sense, we all see how much money we have in our checking account at any given time. We all know whether we have the ability to spend money or not. We know how much we owe on our credit cards and whether we can charge it or not. And for the most part, most of us make rational decisions based on our knowledge of how things work in our personal finances. But the government is no different. People should be able to look around and say, hey, because, I mean, it's in the newspapers and everything, that we had a $3 trillion deficit last year, $2.5 trillion deficit last year, and it looks like it's going to be a $3 trillion deficit this year, and we're already $35 trillion in debt.
36.
36, yeah. Sorry, it's hard to keep up. At some point, even the average voter, the economy is rolling along nicely, their life is fine. They have to recognize that that is a sword that is just hanging above their head. And if it falls at any second, it destroys everything that they have built up. I mean, you would think that people would make the connection between their own personal finances and how atrocious the government's finances are.
Yeah. People don't consider, and I know this from firsthand experience, people don't realize that the money that's spent by government is our money. They really don't get that.
Yeah, it's like the government gets its money off of the money tree. We get our money from working. The money tree is you working. And every penny that you send to the government, by the way, taxation is theft. Every penny that you spend sending to the government is money that's taken out of the productive economy.
Exactly.
Does it occasionally?
They don't make that connection. They don't understand, because a vast majority of people get a tax refund, right? So they think, oh, well, I'm getting money back, so we're doing okay.
Yeah, well, So
No, that's not how it's.
So here is in chat a comment from our old friend Eric Florak, who seems to have found us. The election of Donald Trump
Head.
would seem to fly in the face of your free shit scenario. It doesn't.
What would?
The election of Donald Trump would seem to fly in the face of your free shit scenario. Well, it doesn't, and here's why. Because Donald Trump was elected to do two things: to get inflation under control and to secure the border. Everything else is unchangeable. What the voter thinks is, I can elect Donald Trump, he'll get the inflation down, we'll get the border closed, and once he does that, then I can go back to my free shit.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't understand the comment though. I don't get how that flies in the face.
Yeah, people still want their free shit, and they think that Donald Trump will be more effective.
They are always going to want their free shit.
And they think Donald Trump will be more effective at getting that free shit pipeline, keeping it open.
Oh, okay. I see. Okay.
So he from what I can understand from what Eric is saying, and by the way, Eric, welcome, that electing Donald Trump means that people don't want their free shit anymore. I think that is absolutely false.
No, I don't think that at all. I think that's a long-term problem. That's a problem that has been baked into the cake since the 60s. At least, really the 40s. People expect goodies from the federal government because they think it's all free money.
Okay, so
and that's just stupid.
So it's not real. Eric responds, what of the massive support for DOGE, which is what we've been talking about? That massive support for DOGE, like we said earlier, and I don't know when you came in and when you heard when we started, Eric, that massive support for DOGE is all nice whenever it is Congress doing Congress stuff that is sneaky and underhanded that people don't like. When DOGE starts saying, oh, well, we're going to have to cut Social Security and Medicare, when DOGE says we're going to have to cut the Department of Treasury and the Department of Defense and this and that by half, and the pipeline of free stuff to your house is going to come to an end, let's see how much massive support for DOGE there is then, and how many, and in contrast, how many commercials of Elon Musk rolling granny off the cliff in a wheelchair.
Yep, that's what will happen.
Everybody is happy to see the government, to see Congress brought to heel, as long as their own ox isn't gored. And
that's right.
The way that this government has operated since the 1960s is supplying enough oxes so that if we ever try to cut it, somebody's ox gets gored and they'll start screaming.
Well, it's like that song that Glenn Reynolds always quotes. They'll make us into beggars because they're easier to please.
Exactly, and that's
what has really been the goal since the Great Society of Lyndon B. Johnson.
Tell me people are done with their free shit whenever they start talking about, you know what, the income tax is theft, and we do need to get rid of it. And if we have taxation at all, it should be some form of consumption tax. And
well, that was interesting that Trump actually brought that up. I mean, he's brought it up intermittently, and I don't know how seriously, but he's talked about replacing the income tax with things like tariffs and excise taxes, and basically how we ran the country before the I guess what's that, the 16th Amendment?
Yeah.
He is like, well, maybe now I don't know that we can realistically do that.
We can't, because I ran the math on this a couple of weeks ago, and I think we talked about it. And I would have to go back and try to find it. But I actually went through what is the amount that we import in the United States. And it came to something around $7 trillion of goods were imported. And actually, it was less than that. It was less than 7. And I said, we could tax it at 100% and we still wouldn't cover the federal budget.
Well, unless
Actually, I
they
think it
cut
was
the
only
federal budget.
3.7 trillion. But now I made that comment on X a couple of weeks ago, so now I can't find it. But even a 100% tax on all imports wouldn't pay for the federal
Unless
government
we
that we
cut
have.
the federal budget.
Yeah, by half. And if you
Yeah.
want to cut the federal budget by half, that means you're going to have to start taking people's Social Security and Medicare away.
And you're going to have to cut on the military as well. So our two biggest things are Social Security, well, social benefits. That's like 2/3.
Interest
And
on the
then
national debt, that's $1 trillion.
interest on it is $1 trillion,
And
a little
then
over $1 trillion.
defense, 780
And defense
billion.
is about 800 billion. So you're gonna have to cut into something everybody cares about deeply.
Yeah, and when DOGE starts cutting into things that people care about, then we'll see how it flies. Because first of all DOGE can do is make recommendations. So no matter how much public support that they have, if they come up with something that people don't like, Congress just isn't going to do it because they don't have to.
Yeah, that's right. And you know what? That's fine. I like the idea of getting these concepts out there so people understand this is why we're sinking. We're in a boat that is taking on water and more water every fucking day. And you need to understand where that water is coming from. Now, you may disagree and you don't want to empty that water, but we got to do something or we're going to go under. I mean, it's just that simple.
Yeah, so, I like the fact that people are supporting DOGE. And I like the fact that the first thing out of the gate, before Trump is even president, that they've been able to score a victory. But like I said, this is the easy one.
Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
that's how weak Biden is.
Yeah, Biden is an irrelevance now. He's
absolutely.
He can sit behind the Resolute desk and just play solitaire for the next month or the next 3 weeks. Yeah, it is a month.
That's all he's been doing anyway.
Yes, how would it be any different? Because nothing Biden does matters. Now, I think some things he may do can matter. Issuing blanket pardons to everybody involved in Russia collusion, issuing blanket pardons to the J6 committee.
It's going to happen.
And all of that.
He's going to do it.
He can do that going out the door. I don't even know if he'll have the grace to do it on his last day in office. Sign it at 11:59 on January 21st.
AM. Yeah, right.
Yeah, just so it's his last thing.
He's going to do it. He is absolutely going to do it. We know he's going to do it. Look, one thing we know about Washington is that there's no accountability for Democrats. Period. It's just not going to happen.
I just don't see how we maintain a republic if that's the way it's going to be. If it's just going to be that Democrats always...
Depends on what changes going forward.
Yeah, well, maybe it's the best thing he could do. Maybe the best thing he could do is to say, I'm not going to let Donald Trump prosecute anybody for anything. So all the FBI agents who participated in that travesty of Russian collusion, all of the J6 committee people like Liz Cheney, who, as far as I can tell, suborned Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony and suborned perjury intentionally.
Yes.
Yeah, they're all going to get away with it. And nobody is ever going to be held responsible. Maybe that is the best thing because it'll make people so angry that something will change. I don't know, but
I would look at it this way, in that it takes some fights off of Trump's plate that he really doesn't need to deal with. I would love accountability for these people. I know it's not going to happen, and I'm not sure the fight is worth it, because where he's going to have to fight these is going to be on enemy grounds in DC Circuit Court, well, DC District Court and DC Circuit Court. If those things are taken off his plate, he can look forward and concentrate his efforts on more worthy things. It's not that I don't want these people punished. It's not that I don't think that they deserve punishment and accountability. It's that the fight may not be worth the effort.
I'd sure like to see Andy McCabe in jail, though.
As would I, and have his pension taken away from him, which it was taken away from him, and then they restored it.
You know what? As long as he's in prison,
blah, blah.
as long as he's in prison, I'm happy for him to get his pension.
It goes right into his commissary.
Yeah, he can buy some extra cigarettes.
He can buy cigarettes for everybody, so they don't fuck him in the ass.
Yeah, make his life a little bit easier in some federal medium security cell. But one of the things that so many people want to see is a reckoning for all of these people who, just think of all of the things that has happened.
Right? We know that's not going to happen.
Yeah, but the list of people, Fauci, Birx, all just on the COVID stuff, the whole Wuhan thing. People want to know whether we did this and how deeply we've been lied to, and blanket pardons for all of this stuff, which I hasten to point out the president has the constitutional authority to do.
Yeah, it's unassailable.
Will mean that there is no reckoning at all. And maybe the framers, if they were alive today, might have second thoughts about the unlimited pardon power that they gave to the chief executive.
I don't know, maybe. I'm kind of okay with it, even though I know it gets used for nefarious circumstances. I do actually believe in it. I think that the executive should have that power. That's just me. It's where I stand on it. And I know it gets abused. We saw that with Obama. We saw it with Clinton. We saw it with George Bush.
Yeah, well, at least Clinton had, as shameless as he was, had the good grace to wait until the last day to pardon Mark Rich.
And he got challenged on.
Yeah, and good luck with that. President's power to pardon and commute is plenary.
It's unassailable.
Which is weird. The one power that the federal government gave to the president that could not be argued against in any way was the power of pardon and clemency.
It's, I think, in line with our national ethos in that there should be clemency for bad actors if deserving of such. Now,
that if deserving is a hole big enough to drive a truck through.
Yeah, that's a big hole, but I don't know how else you limit it. I don't know. Do you have to go through like a committee? How's that going to work?
Yeah, set up some sort of clemency committee that recommends pardons and stuff.
One way or the other.
Yeah, I don't know of any way around it, but once, I guess the camel's nose in the tent was Jerry Ford coming out and saying, you know what? I'm going to pardon Richard Nixon for all crimes he committed or may have committed.
That saved a nation. He really did the exact right thing there.
I'm not arguing with you, but we went from that to Jimmy Carter going, oh, well, then I can just
Right.
pardon
Yeah.
279,000
Everybody who
draft
ever
dodgers.
left. Yeah. I mean,
And
the largest clemency ever.
yeah, and so now,
It was like 200,000 people or something.
yeah, so now what you get is, well, which of my political donors, um, Mark Rich, do I pardon? And so, like everything else, it has become debased.
That's government.
I mean, Joe Biden, as a commenter points out, Joe Biden pardoned the Cash for Kids judge.
Yeah. What the fuck? And he pardoned some, who is a rapist? No. It was the Black Widow, the woman who killed three of her, or two husbands and
two husbands and a boyfriend. Let's not make it sound worse than it actually was by saying three husbands. Yeah, and if Biden issues these blanket pardons, yes.
Like, why?
Yeah, but
why would you like what?
Yeah,
what was going through your head?
Well, in Joe Biden's case, oatmeal. But the thing is, I understand what you say, that if Joe Biden just preemptively pardons all of these people, it takes a whole bunch of stuff off the table, and it does.
It does.
But and maybe it is, we can argue about whether it's worse to expend your political capital on those investigations. And it's going to be, those investigations are going to be tough because you're always going to have to put up with the idea that they're politically motivated, not that you're going after people who actually committed felonies.
And the ability to get any information.
I get it. But okay, fine. You do that. You drop Kash Patel into the FBI director's chair. Now, how does he go after anybody? Whatever they may have been done, they've been pardoned for. So even if I prove that they did something,
he can still go after going forward. And that's what I'm looking forward to. Is I want to see Kash Patel get confirmed and then start running roughshod over the remaining FBI assets. Get rid of all of the yes men, get rid of all of the leakers, get rid of all the people who are not committed to the actual purpose of the FBI. Otherwise, you got to reform the FBI. You've got to tear it down and rebuild it.
I'm in the burn it down and rebuild it camp myself as far as the FBI goes. And I'm pretty much there with the CIA too.
CIA, I think, would be much less disruptive to tear down and rebuild because they don't get anything right. Yeah, Our intelligence agencies are fucking shite. They don't get anything right.
Yeah,
they were surprised when Pakistan blew up a fucking nuclear bomb.
Yeah, how much damage could getting rid of the CIA do, considering how bad the intelligence product they have is? Well, except for intelligence that other countries provide us to the CIA as a clearinghouse.
Except for on Americans. Exactly. They're great on spying on us. They suck at spying on anybody else.
With as many Iranian expats as we have in this country, you would think that the CIA would be able to have more intelligence about the Iranians than you could shake a stick at. And they don't.
They don't know shit.
Yeah.
They literally do not know anything. They have been surprised every single time something happens in the Middle East. They didn't know that the Russian invasion was going to happen.
Look, what happened to the CIA and what happened to the FBI is what happens to every single governmental agency. The CIA...
It becomes sclerotic.
Yeah, the CIA was started by freaking cowboys like Wild Bill Donovan. And once the government gets its claws on you everything becomes routinized and proceduralized. And then there are, you know, entire checklists of things that you have to go through to do the simplest thing. And intelligence services only work if you run them as cowboys. And the trouble with that is that what you end up with are, as the church committee showed us, are endless assassination attempts on Fidel Castro with poisoned cigars, exploding cigars.
Exploding good cigars.
They really love the cigars. So cowboys have their own problems, but I think it's easier to take a bunch of cowboys and tell them to settle down than it is to take a bunch of lifelong government bureaucrats and say, hey, take a big risk.
Well, and that's the word, bureaucrats. They are not invested in anything except keeping their jobs and moving up the GS schedule. They don't take anything else seriously.
Hey, by the way, go ahead. I'm sorry. A thought occurred to me. Go ahead.
And what they don't have is initiative. They don't have any incentive to be initiative and to actually dig deeper. They just do their job, put in their reports, and as long as they get their TPS reports in, they're golden.
With the correct cover sheets.
Right. Did you get the memo about the cover sheets?
Yeah. The thing that occurred to me just now, because we were talking about Kash Patel, also the other weak Trump nominee was Pete Hegseth, but I'm not entirely sure that ProPublica didn't just ensure that Pete Hegseth gets confirmed this week.
I think they kind of did. Yeah. I think that backfired on them.
Yeah, because first of all, the idea, it really irked me that the guy from ProPublica said, well, you know, we were just engaged in a journalistic enterprise. Okay, you're ProPublica. Don't make me laugh about your journalism. We all know that you're paid hacks and that whatever your journalism is a hit job. And they had a hit job on Pete Hegseth where he's been saying, yeah, I was accepted into West Point. And they called West Point. A couple of questions.
Yeah, who was the asshole that said he didn't even apply?
Yeah, look, West Point knows who applied and who is accepted for every single year at that school. You get accepted
to a military academy, you're saving that fucking letter.
Yeah, and West Point knows every single person who received an appointment to West Point.
Yes,
they know every single one, and they know whether they got in or not, whether their appointment was successful. So question number one, if you're a real journalist, is why isn't your story that West Point lied to me twice and said that Pete Hegseth got into the
instead
academy?
Of, hey, look how awesome journalists we are. We didn't print the story.
And by the way, these awesome journalists got a hold of Pete Hegseth's lawyer an hour before they were going to publish the story and said, hey, we're going to publish a story that says Pete Hegseth has been lying about being accepted to West Point. We're going to press in an hour. We'd really appreciate it if you'd get back to us before then, which is as close to who cares what you have to say as possible.
Right.
And what Pete Hegseth did, which I think is genius, is he just took a picture of his acceptance letter to West Point and posted it on Twitter.
Emailed it to him, yeah.
And posted it on Twitter. Okay. I mean, he didn't even email it to him. He just posted it on Twitter. No,
that's right. Yeah, he just put it on Twitter.
He just said, yeah, ProPublica is about to say I wasn't accepted into West Point. Here's my West Point acceptance letter. Run with that. So ProPublica.
Badass.
Yeah, so ProPublica.
You know, the thing is
bad.
that, like, I do like ProPublica. They are definitely liberal leaning, but they also come out with some other stuff. They're pretty good about digging around the edges of, of what is hidden by the government. They're pretty good about that. They are definitely left leaning though, and they are definitely hit job people. I mean, they got to get their popularity from somewhere, I guess. But
Yeah, but let's not pretend that you're engaged in some journalistic enterprise. You're
no,
not.
no, I agree with that. And this was absolutely a total stupid hit job that they got nailed on.
From chat, 1 hour of notice. I probably couldn't find my college diploma in that time.
I know I couldn't.
I, on the other hand, can, because both my bachelor's and master's degrees are hanging on this wall right here in a frame.
I think my parents still have my college degree. It's actual sheepskin. And I don't even know where my law school degree is.
Some things that you get after, a decade on active duty in the military is the necessity of hanging up your I love me wall any place where you live or where you have an office. So in my office, I have an I love me wall. There's my Joint Service Commendation Medal. There's my Air Force Achievement Medal. There's my Commendation Medal. There's my 2 diplomas.
Your Academy Award nomination for
Here
starting
my military police brassard from Headquarters Allied Forces Central Europe. I've got it all hanging up here. I can find.
Weren't you in The Devil and Mrs. Jones?
that was a much different award. The award in that case was in the doing, not in the accomplishment. But
how many people are going to actually even get that?
And here's the thing. If it had been any other school, right? If he'd have said, look, I made it into Tulane or the University of Alabama.
Right. They wouldn't even have looked.
Well, it's not that they would have looked, but if they had, nobody is going to keep their acceptance letter from, from Western Carolina Christian University. But when you get an acceptance letter from West Point or the Air Force Academy or the Naval Academy in Annapolis, that's not something you throw away. That is kind of a big deal.
He actually opted for Princeton instead of the West Point Academy.
Yeah, well.
Not exactly a dumb person.
No. And also a lot less marching at Princeton as opposed to West Point.
That's true. Unless he was in ROTC.
He did go into ROTC and graduated and then went into the Army and ended up as a major. So he did the thing.
He did the thing.
Well, Michael, Merry Christmas. It's our last one of the year.
Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to all our followers. I hope everybody has a great week. Happy New Year's. We'll see you in 2025.
Yes, we will be back. What is it? New Year's Day is on a Tuesday, right? So
I think that's right.
That Sunday after New Year's.
No, New Year's Day is on a Wednesday, isn't it?
Okay, so whenever that Sunday is,
following Sunday,
2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th. So the 5th-ish of January we'll look to be back. But until then, we're taking a break. So Michael, enjoy your break. I'll enjoy mine.
All right, you too, buddy. Love you.
Love you too, man. We'll see you later. And for the rest of you, I hope you have a great Christmas as well and enjoy the time with your friends and family. Have a great rest of 2024. We'll see you next year. Till then, so long.